Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So at tea time we had a discussion that went over various topics, but one of the things that came up was the trying to describe maybe the multifaceted aspect of the practice of Buddhism, and that's one of the. And I think one of the things is there is a juxtaposition between a true simplicity of the teachings, but then also there are different areas of practice and training and of the teachings that are important and necessary to consider and to try to understand. So they say, like Ajahn Chah saying quite directly, he says, practice is really simple. You only need to do two things: know and let go. That's enough. That's all you need to do. And it is really true. It's not facetious or simple or simplistic, but in order to know and let go, it does really need some support and some kind of path that we follow and that we train ourselves in, guidelines that try to hold it and try to get this balance within our practice that facilitates and support this quality of knowing clearly and then being able to let go and release. And one of the things that came to mind at the end of the tea time is a teaching that the Buddha, when you read the discourses, it comes up in many places, and that's the gradual instruction. And I think of that that sense of there being a gradual instruction, a gradual training, a gradual deepening of understanding that relies on these different teachings, and it's not linear. In the same way, say, like the Eightfold Path is not a linear path. It's linear because we have to talk about it, and the only way we can talk is one word after another. And so it ends up coming out as a linear path. But it really is there's a certain circular aspect to it, there's a certain interwoven aspect to the path. And similar, this gradual instruction is very much the same. And how the Buddha presents this gradual instruction is the generosity, virtue, heavens, drawbacks, renunciation, and then the Four Noble Truths. And I think it is a really, that covers a lot of aspects that help to balance our say, inner faculties, our inner qualities, so that there is a well-rounded, stable sense of clarity and well-being. Because it is important to recognize that in the discourses when the Buddha gives this gradual teaching or a graduated approach to the teaching, that there's a kind of a stock phrases that are used, and that when the Buddha recognizes that the listener is settled, is clear, is open to the teachings, then and has a steady, clear quality of mind that's ready to listen to the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, then he gives that. It isn't that somebody comes and shows a bit of interest in Dhamma, and then the Buddha said, well, here's these Four Noble Truths, and walks away. So he prepares the mind, prepares the heart to be ready and clear, and I think one of the qualities that describes quality of concentration, of samadhi, is the quality of being malleable or soft, and where the mind is softened. It's also clear and steady. But it's also one of the qualities that the Buddha describes that mind of steadiness as ready for work. Kamaniya. So it's ready for action. It's not sort of a dull peacefulness, or just kind of completely zoned out peacefulness. It's ready to contemplate. It's ready to investigate. It's ready to consider. It's ready to relinquish. It's ready to know and let go. So there's a certain preparation that's required, and that integrating the quality of generosity, giving, dana, and so that quality of dana, you start reflecting on that, and then that in itself expands out, in a sense. It isn't just where do I write my check sort of thing. But it's a giving in the sense of being ready to share, and when it's sharing, it isn't just a material sharing. It's being able to share space. Sort of the being able to have a sense of generosity of heart with the people around us. So that sense of generosity, a giving quality of heart. Right? Where we're one, there's not a sense of putting up walls and barriers around oneself. There's an openness and a generosity of heart where one isn't either in competition with others and isn't shutting people out, because that's not very generous. Start shutting people off, and so you start saying, "Oh, this generosity starts to affect the mind in many different ways." The generosity in terms of service, and being able to recognize that other people have needs, whether they're emotional or physical, and you're ready to be generous, to be ready to help others, and that takes a certain mindfulness and awareness, and an actual recognition that others exist. Great revelation that there's other people in the world than myself. It's a big deal. A lot of people don't get that far. So it's the sense of generosity is sort of important, and so even the sense of generosity, giving, sharing. There's different aspects that the Buddha points to as well. And so, like Dhamma Dhamma, the giving of Dhamma, giving of being able to share Dhamma, give Dhamma, give truth, giving of truth. No, which isn't. There's a difference between giving and generosity and going around with this blazing eyes and missionary zeal, where you're going to tell people the Dhamma. That's scary. It's not. You want to get out of there quick. But so that's not really, it's generosity. It's that's actually coming from a self-interest or self-view. So that this quality of generosity, giving Dhamma, giving of truth, realizing that when one gives and shares, it should be grounded in truth. In terms of somebody asks for perspective, or one sees something that is requires some kind of reflective perspective, then you say, how do we ground that in, say, in Dhamma or in truth? Not so much doctrinally, but in terms of something that is really rooted in the way things are. This accords with reality. That's a real gift when one can be able to do that, and we all can do that. Or even if it's like many of the so much of the publications that we do in our tradition are Dhamma Dhamma. Those are gifts of Dhamma. So that having teachings that one knows from different from different teachers, and they're compiled, and they're printed and published, and then they're given as a gift of Dhamma. So it's a beautiful gift. And another aspect of dana is the Abhaya dana, which is especially in the Thai language. Abhaya has the connotation, it's the same as Abhayagiri. Like the fearless mountain, Abhaya is literally fearless. And say in the Thai language, and the way that it's expressed, it's a forgiveness, a giving of forgiveness, and that's a real gift. We're not holding a grudge, holding a perception of somebody locked into this is who they are, that's what they are. And especially when it's negative. So that's a gift of forgiveness. Also, say Abhaya its literal meaning is like fearless, but it's also say safety, security. So a gift of safety, security. So like for people to come into this space and to look after them, and for it to be a place where precepts are held, that's a Abhaya dana. It's a gift of safety and security, and to care for people with loving kindness and compassion. That's a gift of safety and security. And that's in terms of the human condition. We kind of like to prop ourselves up as being human and somewhat advanced, but our amygdalas are not responsive to that logic, really. It's like fear just goes, kicks in there really quickly, and so that to be able to consciously create and to be attentive to that gift of where somebody can not have to be fearful, not have to be suspicious. That's a real gift. So that quality of generosity. I've been talking for 20 minutes on this gradual, but I haven't got past the first. But you start seeing how this is like a gradual path it starts tying in with everything. Many things get tying in. Remember Ajahn sort of said, it doesn't matter where you pick up the Dhamma, everything else comes along with it. So it's like I just pick up this little corner of this bag here, but the whole bag comes along with it. And that's the Dhamma is like that. Because it's all tied together. And it supports and integrates with each aspect of the teaching and of the training. So just picking up a quality like Dhamma, then you start realizing that this if you conceptually it's so easy to go, gosh, I got to get my samadhi together so I can have my insights, there's a certain logic to it, but because you can't just let yourself be completely scattered and have the whole plan. But it requires these foundations, or it's just mindfulness. I get that. I get all the techniques for being mindful all the time, and I'll get this flash of insight. But you start realizing, all of the aspects of mindfulness, of concentration, of wisdom, they rely on other factors as well. Saying generosity is certainly one of those qualities, and it's important to not forget that. And then, of course, as soon as you speak of generosity, then that's a quality that necessarily brings you into contact with others. And so when you're in contact with others, then you're starting to talk about the aspect of spiritual friendships, Kalyana, and of course the Buddha puts a huge emphasis on the benefit and the role that having good spiritual friends has in our development of the path of practice. So that because sometimes it's easy to kind of think, it's just like it's that first quality of in his list, so I better get that over real quick so I can get on to the others. Because those are the other ones are sort of at the top of the list. They must be the real good ones. But they work together, and they do. And when one gives attention to and tries to put one into practice in a deep and meaningful way, it starts to unfold and expand out and start to encompass the practice. So it's that reflection on Dhamma. But then you realize, then the aspect of Sila, which that's another huge sort of topic. The sense of virtue and integrity, the precepts that we have, whether it's, say, 5 precepts of the layperson, 8 precepts on observance days, special days, monastic precepts. But there's the details of them, but the fundamental, purpose of the precepts, and this is something that Ajahn Chah used to emphasize over and over again, is that their purpose is to understand intention or volition, the Pali Cetana, and because Cetana or volition, the Buddha is very unequivocal. So volition or Cetana is karma. And so whatever karma we make, it's based on this volition, the volitional impulse toward an action of body, speech, or mind is the creation of karma. And it's like this. There's a cause, there's an effect. It's very ordinary, quite natural. So that having a mirror to be able to understand that intention, volition, the impulse, the movement of the mind, by having certain standards of conduct in body and speech, then it helps us to shine, like shining a light back on our own heart, so that we can see where that mind is moving towards in terms of our motivation, intention, the impulse that comes behind, and we can start to understand it more clearly. So that's a function of the precepts or of sila or virtue. Another perspective on that is there's a story of from Ajahn Chah's life where he went to pay respects to Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun is this great meditation master and kind of the grandfather of the Thai forest tradition. And Ajahn Chah went to one of the questions that he asked Ajahn Mun was around precepts and around the path, in the sense of because Ajahn Chah he was meditating and practicing, but he was also studying at the same time, and he was reading the Visuddhimagga, and at that. For those people who don't know the Visuddhimagga, it's this whopping thick book, and this is Turong lugging this book around, and that's real commitment. But Ajahn Chah says, I'm reading this, the Visuddhimagga, this path of purification, as a commentarial work, very respected in the Theravada tradition. He said, I don't think it's humanly possible to practice if it's like this. And he said, there's just so much detail and just you just take the area around the precepts and the moral training. He said, it doesn't look like it's humanly possible, and because it's just so refined, so detailed, so many things that seem to you have to do or not do. And Ajahn Mun said, there's a lot. He said, but it's not so much, because it's only about the qualities of the heart. And he said, all of the refinement and the details of that moral training in that book is all about just the cultivation of the qualities of, in the Pali, hiri and ottappa. And there isn't really good English translations of this. It's a technical term that hiri is usually translated as like moral shame, which is not good in English language. But what it means is that there is there's like one's inner conscience shrinks back from unskillful action. So that pulling back but an indication of the underlying mental state is that the reason why there is this quality of say, a pulling back is because of one respects oneself. And that's really important. One has this respect for oneself, this really firm quality of respect toward oneself, so that one doesn't want to do something that's not fitting for one's self as a good human being. So one wants to pull back. The quality of ottappa is also, sometimes it's just like moral dread. These are Edwardian translations, but even the newer ones are hard. The English language is a language of shame and fear. So that's what we get. but it's just understanding those roots, and because the root of ottappa is respect for others. So when one sees seeing the human qualities in others, and one has respect for them, so one doesn't want to do something that's harmful or hurtful. So they're actually very simple emotions, but they're very brightening to the mind when we can have that kind of respect for ourselves and respect for others, and then our actions are guided by that. So this is this quality of hiri-ottappa. So it's very beautiful, and it's something that the Buddha calls these are the two protectors of the world. These are of course they protect us too. So this aspect of sila as a training, and it isn't just about keeping a few rules. As you've got these certain guidelines and rules, but then it turns into a training that is really eliciting very beautiful qualities in how we relate to ourselves and relate to the world around us. So that it seems that you're building these foundations of training that are necessarily laying foundations of very wholesome qualities, generosity, virtue. The other, the next quality in this list that the Buddha says is the graduated instruction is a sankha, and it's got the heavens. And you think, heavens? I don't practice for heavens. I don't even believe in heavens. but certainly within certainly at the time of the Buddha, and then just about any religious tradition speaks of other realms, and then even if one didn't believe in other realms, there's still heavenly qualities that we can be tapping into that are bright states of mind, bright states of being, that we're really worthy of cultivation. And those qualities of say the Brahma Viharas, those are the divine abidings. Those are heavenly qualities, divine states of being, worth cultivating in this present moment. If we start thinking in terms of, say, heavens, heavenly realms, heavenly states, then we also said that, one of the reasons why those states are accessed is because of putting in the causes and coming back to the, say, fundamental law of karma. There is action, there is result. And say if one wants to access, say, heavenly states in this life, heavenly states in whatever life, there needs to be the causes. So then we start having to pay attention to karma, action, and the results of action. So that's one of the say like a distinguishing feature of the Buddha's teaching is that it is a teaching that relies on cause and condition. It relies on karma and the results of karma. And it's also, say, in the time of the Buddha, there were, say, religious seekers who didn't believe in karma. And there were religious teachings or religious orders that did believe. And if one of those from different orders, religious orders, wanted to ordain with the Buddha, they wanted to change their they wanted to train and become Buddhist monks, the general standard, they would need to do a period of, say, probation, and live with the order, not taking the ordination immediately, but they have to be under probation, period of probation, to sort of say, okay, are they going to fit in, are they going to make it, are they going to accept this teaching and training for this period of 3 months or 4 months. And but if they were following an order that the foundation of their teaching, say, accepted karma, then that could be foregone. They wouldn't need to follow that probation. So again, you get an insight into what was important to the Buddha in terms of systems of understanding, systems of training. So that there's this fundamental acceptance of this law of karma is sort of front and center in the Buddha's teaching. And so that again, these are fairly simple say when there's a gradual instruction, okay, generosity, virtue, heavens. It's only a few things, but then it's starting. The kind of the web of different qualities is starting to a picture is starting to emerge that is pretty refined and complex. So that there's a fundamental simplicity of qualities that we just like that. Okay, all you need to do is know and let go, and that that is true. But it's helpful to have the support of these different qualities that help to brighten the mind, bring a certain stability to one's being in order to integrate and allow all these different qualities in so that they can be put in their proper perspective and place. And the mosaic turns into a kind of a picture of this path of practice, or this vision of truth that the Buddha gives, rather than a jumble of different odds and ends. So that, and then there's aspect of let's say other aspects of this graduated path, graduated instruction. Is the sense of seeing the drawbacks. So adinava, because when the Buddha, there's certain teachings that the Buddha gives, like in the first discourse that the Buddha gives. He sort of says, it wasn't until I saw these Four Noble Truths and the 12 aspects that I was able to declare myself fully awakened. But then there's other approaches to the teaching, or aspects of the teachings, that he says exactly the same thing. So it wasn't until I saw dependent origination that I could declare. But also, it wasn't until I saw the drawback as the drawback, saw the benefit as the benefit, and the way out as the way out, that I could declare it for me. So there's just so that there is a drawback, sort of like a key, sort of seeing the worm in the apple, and seeing that, there's seeing the impermanent, unstable nature of something that seems so solid, seeing the difficulty in something that is, because even bright states of mind that we cultivate or ideals of virtue and integrity that we can create a problem out of that. We can if it's not held in the right way, then there can be a drawback there, in that when it's not held with wisdom, it's not, so that seeing the drawback that's easy to arise whether it's in terms of physical world around us, or the internal world of our perceptions and feelings. It can change really quickly, and we can get attached to things. It can be problematic. But in the same way, we can say seeing the benefit is a benefit, because when seeing the opportunity for goodness, the opportunity for insight, the opportunity for release, we have to be able to see that. and an act on. So that recognition of these different aspects, and then seeing the way out, seeing the escape, and that's always around. It is very standard, and when the Buddha describes it, it's always the relinquishing of attachment. It's always that relinquishing of identification. Okay. And then the aspect of renunciation. That was something that... so, again, in English language, renunciation is... you just say the word renunciation. Oh no. But that sense of, when one approaches, say, like nekamma is a barami, you think. Okay, barami are these bright spiritual qualities that are supports in crossing over, in that sense. Because the word barami is sort of literally a crossing over. So they're bright spiritual qualities that allows to cross over from confusion to clarity, from suffering to well-being, from say dullness to brightness, from our defilements to bright states of being. So those are, and so nekamma is a barami. So that it's not one isn't that renunciation or relinquishment, a letting go, is actually an opportunity to put down the burden, and that brightens the heart, and being able to not be bound up and tied to either physical objects of attachment or internal objects of attachment. Our views and opinions, those are really good things to hold on to. As renunciation, just to be able to, our self-identification, to being able to loosen our grip on that a bit. So that aspect of renunciation is like knowing and letting go. It's knowing is that releasing and allowing it to drop away. And so that these are the qualities that lay that foundation to really to open the possibility to really letting the Four Noble Truths penetrate the heart. So that aspect of the Buddha's path is actually quite simple and straightforward. Just know and let go. But it does require an integrated path of practice and training and knowledge, and being able to put it together in a way that allows the mind, allows the heart to really be stable and clear, so that we can know and let go. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.
So I'll do the warm-up set first before we get into the main act. Privilege. So just like to just express my greetings to everyone, and very nice to be here. So in brief, in answer to Sakula's question, I'm part of the group coming here today. I'm a monk based in Thailand. I guess a brief bio, people really like the bio. And so personally, I was born in England, but of my mother's Thai, so ethnic, half Thai and half Malaysian, and then grew up in England. And then in brief, when I was 18, I had a chance to be a novice for a temporary period, which is the Thai tradition. At some point, either a novice or maybe if you're over 20, before you get married and start working, to be a monk for a few months. And I ended up having the good fortune to connect with the Ajahn Chah tradition at that time, still a teenager, and I met Luang Por Pasanno. We were all a bit younger then. And Ajahn Jayasara, who many of you know. And so then I went back to university, or disrobed, and did my studies, and then came back to the robes, feeling that this was a good thing to do and a nice way to live. And so myself, for now the last 20 odd years, I've been living in Thailand, mainly at our monastery called Wat Bananachat. I think many of you have been there or heard of it at least, and studying with mainly there and some other Thai teachers, and right now coming here, being in America is just a nice chance to you could say change one's atmosphere, because we're part of this now, this say global monastic family, which has its roots, has its no, I don't want to say heart, because it's everywhere, but yeah, it has its roots in Thailand, and but obviously we're part of this big family, which includes, say, the sanghas like this one, groups like this one. And so I think it is a nice thing for those of us who live in Thailand then to come and spend more time rather than just visiting. I've visited before briefly, mainly accompanying senior monks, helping facilitate and translating. But then to come and actually get some chance just to live normally, just be regular part of the sangha, and seeing how things work, both how monastic life, our form, the monks, how that works, in a big monastery like Abhayagiri, or in the Hermitage where I was able to spend a few days in July. It's very informative and educational, as well as basically fun, in the sense of just putting down any responsibilities or that sense of the familiar that I might have in Thailand, and just being in a totally new environment. Very few, expectations and burdens and that kind of thing. Also seeing, this kind of situation, the Dhamma in the West, seeing how it spreads, is also I think a really interesting thing, because it can when you live in a country like Thailand, which is we often talk about, say, culturally Buddhist. It's kind of got this history and the culture and the traditions and many aspects which you then just take for granted, or you don't really necessarily think, say, you don't have to sometimes be so conscious about how you do things, because you're part of this kind of cultural stream. Whereas here, then everything, we have to be very conscious about everything. What forms do we take on? How do we practice? What are the appropriate teachings and how to present it? So I'm basically a bit quietly studying, you could say learning how that works, but because it's relevant everywhere. Now modern Thailand is different from Thailand 20, 30, 50 years ago. And leading this monk's life as well. It's just the modern age. It's the age of tech and the age of all these kind of things. So how are we going to move on in the way where we're still in the world but not of the world, but connected enough to be functioning? So it's very interesting. So that's a little bit of a background. My main base now is luckily in a forest retreat hermitage, which actually Luang Por established way back in the, I guess, beginning in the late 80s, but properly established in 1993 as a hermitage in a national park on the Burmese border. And so that's a bit my role, the sort of sangha role, looking after that, provides a place where monks can go kind of like retreat. So,
I just wanted to say that I'm really happy to be here tonight, and I'm really happy that you all are here tonight. More so because I'm not able to be at the Pah Bah this weekend. And I want to say I'm sorry for that, because I feel like the Pah Bah is a really important part of the symbiotic relationship between monastics and lay people. And you do so much for all of us here in Portland and lay people everywhere, and I think it's an important thing to show that gratitude and respect and mutual support. So I want to say I'm sorry for not being there this weekend. I'm grateful to see you tonight.
Okay. Yeah, no, oftentimes the perception of kind of Buddhism in the way, and Portland Friends of the Dhamma does a really good job of presenting a bit more nuanced perspective on picking up Buddhism, Buddhist practice, because oftentimes it tends to be like a mindfulness technique and or a meditation, and Buddhism is much more it's a richer tapestry than that, and so that the opportunity to participate in some of the ceremonial aspects, devotional practice, some aspect of you can sort of say, oh, it's a Pah Bah, it's just some ritual that they do, but it's that's actually what say one of the great functions of ceremony is that it brings people together in a way that you can both be a part of, it can be a part of your Buddhist practice, but you're actually doing it with people, and then also the aspects of generosity is a big part of the kind of the atmosphere of the day, and that's something that in terms of taking into our daily life, that recognition that generosity and harmonizing with other human beings, that's how we live, we need to live in the world, and meditation doesn't solve all the problems. Is that ability to be attentive to the and to pick up on certain basic themes of just generosity, coming together. It's quite joyful, and you think, well, what was joy? Because many people, oftentimes you have people who've been, and you say, that was really a kind of joyful, fun time, and then you look back and didn't actually do anything. But you realize, oh, it felt good. And that's actually, it's a really important observation to make, is that we don't have to actually do a whole lot or have it all structured. That's something that is get our life structured so we can be happy. And Americans just drive themselves nuts trying to structure their lives. Just having a time where we can gather and just a lot of heart qualities can be tapped into. Yeah.
I have a question. I've been wondering a bit lately, for a long time, kind of using where the practice leads in terms of the mind, how it functions, because I know some of the classic teachings in literature is that greed, hatred, and delusion are eradicated from the mind. Yeah. I was sitting once with this really highly regarded monastic teacher, supposedly super enlightened, and I was really curious. So I was watching him while he was sitting, and then at one point he itched himself. And it was just like so amusing to me that isn't this like aversion coming out? And noticing that like as my practice has progressed, I don't feel like I've so much gotten rid of these things, like the fact that aversion doesn't come up so much as there's this greater degree of equanimity towards it. And it's like, oh, these things come and go in the mind stream and I don't have to latch onto them. And there's a greater sense of spaciousness, non-attachment. But it hasn't been so much just like, oh, I don't have fear at all, ever. And wondering if this, like, what your thoughts are on the practice, and if it is like a person actually gets to a point where there's like zero shame, fear, sadness, like zero human emotion, or it's just that ability to be extremely rooted in satipanya and, act that way.
Yes. Well, in this, because it's it is important to recognize that just because somebody is, say, liberated, doesn't mean they don't feel anything, and it doesn't mean that especially in some things are important to attend to. You itch, so you scratch it. It's just this. That would be an appropriate response. Oftentimes what we try to analyze it, or that's an inappropriate response. Trying to analyze something that is just. It's like one of the things that there's an idiom that's used in the suttas speaking about, say, one of the difficulties of say, the human condition that brings the suffering is just complicating that which needs not be complicated. And so then these are just straightforward. And there is, certain elements of it isn't as if somebody becomes fully awakened and then they don't have any likes or dislikes whatsoever. But what does happen is that there is there's an awareness of that, and then there's an appropriate response, and the mind doesn't isn't shaken by it. So maybe a good example is say the Buddha himself. There's a story where Sariputta comes into the monastery late one day, and he's got a whole bunch of newly ordained monks with him, and they're unrestrained, noisy, and kind of chatting and talking away, and the Buddha asks Ananda, his attendant, what's that racket going on? It sounds like people in a fishmongers in the market, and I said, well, it's Sariputta with a bunch of newly ordained monks. He said, just tell them to leave. And somebody might say, wow, the Buddha is he's just still full of anger and ill will, but the Buddha said, that's just really not on. And so he made a decision to send them away from the monastery. And then some days later, he met Sariputta, and he said, what did you think when I when I sent you out of the monastery? Because of course this is the right hand disciple of the Buddha, and they've had contact. And he said, and it was just it isn't as if he sent him away and just never come back again, but it's sort of sent them off, and it was trying to make a point. And it's like there's certain duties that you come into a monastery, and you keep your demeanor of mindfulness, and you go about your duties quietly, and I'll bet those young monks never forgot that. And it's a really, really important point. So that we can read things from the outside, but we don't really know what the Buddha's state of mind was. But I assume that he wasn't acting out of greed, hatred, and delusion. He was acting out of making a decision, and a feeling arose, a perception of the circumstance, and that's how he dealt with it. And another example of Ajahn Jayasaro tells the story of sitting with Ajahn Chah and massaging his feet just underneath the kuti. It's a very ordinary scene in the old days, and Ajahn Chah sitting in his chair underneath his kuti, and there'd be people coming and going, and monks there, and asking questions or receiving people, visitors coming, and then a monk came in who was undergoing a period of penance because of a transgression to the discipline, and the monk came there, and Ajahn Chah sort of just chewed him out, and was very direct with him, very blunt, very. Quite a strong. He kind of sort of up one side and down the other, and took a strip out of him. But Ajahn Jayasaro said, what was really interesting was during that time he's massaging his feet, and it's just there's no tension. There was no change in the feeling of him just being relaxed and being with the monk. So it's sort of like, okay, let's put on my Tafajan face and give the monk a serious talking to. But inside didn't seem to be any movement, and so that's. And it isn't sort of, and again, it's a decision or a choice that is made. He saw that the monk has misbehaved. He's behaved inappropriately. To just not say anything, or to say something that is too warm and fuzzy. At the time, he didn't think it was appropriate. So there are feelings, and it's also, think of the Buddha. There's a very beautiful sutta where it's getting toward the end of the Buddha's life, and he's looking out to the assembled community, and Sariputta and Mahamoggallana have recently passed away. That's their sort of the right hand, left hand disciple, main chief disciples of the Buddha, and they've recently passed away. There was within months of each other, I think, and the Buddha just sort of saying, looking out and saying, the assembly seems empty without Sariputta and Moggallana here. And she would say, it's like it wasn't as if he didn't feel anything. It was just absolutely sort of, it's really different. It's really a poignant scene, a certain sadness. But then he also went on and said, but haven't I always taught that all compounded things are impermanent, and that's the reality. Even these beings who we have this very strong connection to, respect for, even they have to pass away, and so that there's a recognition of the poignancy, but it's not losing the sight of the truth of Dhamma, so that one can see that, feel it. But then it's not sort of overwhelmed with, say, sadness or it isn't as if you're not feeling anything, but it is as if you're sort of kind of wrapped up in grief. So those are just some perspectives. I think that greed, hatred, and delusion are eliminated, but it doesn't mean that all human emotion is annihilated, and that's what constitutes an enlightened being. I mean, somebody like Ajahn Chah was I lived very close to him for a long time, and he was somebody who experienced, he seemed this pillar of stability and equanimity amongst this monastery with countless monks and nuns and laymen, laywomen, and things coming and going, and he was sort of like this solid center. But it's not as if he didn't feel anything or didn't have likes or dislikes. You knew what he didn't like. And you didn't forget it. So that it's just sort of kind of balancing those things. And I remember one sweet occasion walking. He was with we're taking parents of a Western monk around Wat Pah Pong, and we went into the nun section, which is the monks rarely. I mean, Ajahn Chah would go over to teach, but if you were an ordinary monk, you'd never got the chance to go into the nun section. So it was kind of a big deal. Got to go there, go in the nun section, and Ajahn Chah's mother was a nun for a long time, and she had I'm not sure if we'd had her cremation yet or not. Maybe, anyway, but she had passed away. And then he said, I used to come over here all the time to visit my mother, and now she's passed away. And so that had been, I don't know, probably over 20 years that she was a nun. And so he said, now she's passed away. And then he sort of said, now I'm an orphan. It was just the way he said it was really quite sweet.
Following up on what you had said about having the emotion, having the awareness that there's an emptiness in the room without the presence of his two disciples. To think about that, it's kind of lofty, and I kind of envision that. But for me, living my life in the world, I have
And I knew clearly this morning, that there's a Veda now. And I don't like it. And then I'm going, and I get in my Buddhist hat. And seriously, it sounds comical, but I get kind of going, okay, then don't get connected with the attachment to having it be different. Then you create all this suffering. And I understand, I get that part. But then there's this part over here. There's a little Patty who's going, yeah, but this really hurts. This is really sad. I really don't. And I don't know how to put those together.
Well, they have to go together because they do live together. So a lot of it is, and that's why the, it's not trying to figure it out rationally. Okay. Because that's what we want. We want a rational answer, and we want clear instructions on what we do. But to be able to come back and contemplate it from the place of the Four Noble Truths, and not Four Noble Truths as a doctrine and a dogma and a formula, but paying attention to the feeling and saying, because this dissonance, that in itself is suffering. And just that dissonance between I'm supposed to be a Buddhist practitioner, and then you can line up all the reasons for that. I've been practicing for however long. I just got off retreat, and all of that. And then there's these feelings and reactions, but that's adding something to it. And what's more important is coming back to the feeling itself. Okay. This is what's happening, is on the feeling level or on the reactive level of some aversion or attachment or opinion that we're coming up with of how we think we should be or how the world should be or how it shouldn't be, and then just being able to feel that and say, okay, this is dukkha, and being willing to stick with that, because usually we want to get rid of it as quickly as possible, and that's exactly what the Buddha says in terms of the and you say our response to dukkha, or our inappropriate response to dukkha, is moving away from it. And so then that clouds the understanding of dukkha. And so so being willing to just be present with it. It's like in the where the Buddha gives the in the Dhammacakka Sutta, giving both the Four Noble Truths, but actually the appropriate response. So the appropriate response to dukkha is to be able to know it thoroughly, to understand it fully. There's a lot of resistance to knowing it clearly, understanding it fully. Well, how can I distract myself? How can I get away from this? How can I make it somebody else's problem? It's not me at all. It's that person doing this to me. So there's any number of ways that we do that. So it's no, this is dukkha. How do I understand it? How do I experience? How do I follow what's happening here? Yeah, well, and that was something that say with so often us as Westerners going to ask questions from Ajahn Chah and wanting to get answers, and so often it would be Just be patient. Be willing to be patient with this. And of course the feeling is, how can I be patient with this? But that sense of being willing to just be present with, be with, and also I think sometimes reconfiguring and rethinking what we consider as patience. Usually how we conceive of patience is just waiting for something unpleasant to be over, to be gone, so I don't have to deal with it. But patience is much more a willingness to be present with an experience, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. Because we miss a lot. We're not even patient with the pleasant things. It's like there's so much. That's been the whole agenda of a modern capitalist society to make more things available to you so that you can be comfortable and happy. And the reality is we've got more and more things that are available to us, and we don't have the clarity of mind to enjoy any of it. So it's like sort of, so what? So it's just being just being willing to be present with the being patient with whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, just being with, not just moving away from.
Yeah, I guess to follow up on that, for the last while, a lot of my practice has been working with guarding the sense doors, and it's been interesting how it all sort of leads to, at the end of the day, guarding the mind, and how, because the mind will do anything. The mind moves, it fantasizes, it there's all kinds of things that it does, and it doesn't cease to amaze me what it does and how it moves. And in fact, the Buddha said it will move, to whatever degree, there's going to be restless in the mind, until the end. And I don't know what you were just saying. You did remind me of that, and I just wonder if you could say a little bit more, especially as it relates to kind of guarding one's mind and sort of how that develops over time.
Well, I think in the end, everything gets pulled back into the mind, and being pulled back into, that's the but it is important to, because we can get so self-obsessed that's not, that isn't really, because we can identify so strongly with, this is my mind, this is my practice, and we get so self-obsessed that we miss this. So much of it is around balance, and a balance and evenness and ease that is there. It's part of Ajahn Chah's teaching that comes up over and over again is this quality of just right, just enough, and that is because we can conceptually we can say, like, we need to be, we do need sense restraint. We do need restraint of the mind. We need to understand the mind. We need to really understand it clearly. But there's also this quality of just right quality that's important, and this just enough quality that is a balance. That is because I think the indications of that balance are just these qualities of a certain clarity and ease, a steadiness, stability, so that really paying attention to those qualities. What is it that helps those qualities to be established, and how do we support and nurture those qualities so that there is this continuity of clarity and steadiness and ease, and that is like an integral part of the or an integral indication of the path functioning. So that's some of the things that just come up off the top of my mind. And that's also why I tend to teach a lot of mindfulness of the body, because there you've got a more tangible sense of, am I present? Am I at ease? Because on a certain level, like that mindfulness of the mind is like, it's easy to end up down the rabbit hole and entangled in our own minds. So that mindfulness of the body helping to be a mirror for the mind. So that one is a bit more recognized, because it isn't just the content of the mind, it's the tone. And that tone is so important. Okay, helpful? Yeah.
So, I'm one of those Americans that's constantly trying to structure my life, especially on my cushion.
Yeah.
I just reread an article on the website you wrote on becoming and stopping.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm finding on my cushion that I'm much more aware of when I'm, rehearsing a, conversation with my boss, or, figuring out what I'm going to eat 3 days from now, that kind of thing. And so the awareness has been helpful, but I want it to stop right now. So I wonder if you could offer some encouragement or ideas about dealing with Pah Bah when, on the cushion.
I think again that encouragement to patience is important, but again, trying to reconfigure or re-understand, or try to re-understand what patience is more about, in the sense of just being present. Because even being present with that becoming starts to get a good feeling for, okay, what am I doing here? And starting to understand it more. So that willingness to feel it and get a sense of how the pull that's there, then as we're present with that, then it becomes clear, and it becomes more natural to let that go, or to release around that, as opposed to sort of, okay, this is becoming, and I need to do this. And so, but that be willing to just stay with and be present, and then realize, okay, that because it's seeing, oh yeah, and it might not even be either consciously articulated of this is dukkha, but it's sort of the feeling is, yeah, this is dukkha. I really want to release this and let go. So that becoming, and then the actual stopping becomes, it isn't sort of a conscious, oh, I got to make this stop, but it's more like, that's the most appropriate response, is to allow it to cease. And there's a real ease and spaciousness around that. Yeah, Scott.
I practice working with happiness and joyfulness. There's the felt sense of that in the body it can be quite pleasurable. And sometimes I get confused about. We were in a conversation earlier tonight. Kind of started me wondering if I'm confusing the difference between something that is pleasurable and something that brings happiness, and thinking that maybe some of the sense stimulation that arises and it seems pleasurable might not be really a form of happiness that is appropriate, or like the happiness that's referred to as an enlightenment factor. Can you bring some clarification to that?
Again, I think it's important to pay attention to the felt sense of it, because generally, what would say the response to pleasurable sensation that we react out of, say, sense stimulation, sense desire, then it moves in terms of it's seeking another object, or it starts proliferating. But happiness that is, say, like a path factor, is one that is deeply settling, and helps the mind to release or relinquish, because it's happy with what it's experiencing, rather than it being a source of stimulation for something else one could get. So it could start the same way, but endpoint's a bit different. Because it is important to recognize the role that happiness plays in our practice, because it isn't sort of like, oh, if I just eliminate all happiness, then I'll be equanimous and I'll finally get enlightened. It's more of that sense of, oh no, there is a huge role that happiness plays but the objects are a lot more innocent and settling, and so then that way they're really nurturing of the practice. Yeah.
I found that I've been feeling a wide gap lately between feeling like our actions and our behaviors matter, and our choices we make matter, and the notion of releasing and letting go. It's been sort of difficult for me lately to reconcile those two ideas. So what are your thoughts?
Well, all I can say, our actions matter. They affect us. It's just even that, because even the action, say a mental action of saying, nothing matters anyway. It all sucks. That has an effect. So it's, there's a response that's elicited, and it's not really helpful or wholesome. So you realize that our actions really do have an effect, and it's important to be attentive, but not again that sense of balance and just right quality is important, because we can try so hard to get everything right that we're miserable all the time. And to be able to take an interest in how does this causal process work? How does this? Because that's one of the fundamental foundations and characteristics of the Buddha's teachings, that there are for whatever cause there is an effect, and that was the say Sariputta's that was Sariputta's stimulation to his insight, liberating insight into stream entry was one of the first 5 disciples being asked by Sariputta, "What did your teacher teach?" And he said, "Well, my teacher taught that all things are can't remember exactly what it was, but all things arise from cause and their cessation." So that the causal process was front and center. And that's a very famous short phrase in Pali. It was on ancient holy sites in India and stupas and whatnot. That was one of the things that was carved in stone all through these ancient sites. So that this sense of the Buddha teaching, this causal process, that this is these causes and conditions, cessation of those causes. This is where dukkha and cessation of dukkha come to be understood. So that being able to reflect on that or take an interest in it, because it isn't as if I've got to be super careful on these causes and results, but it's more like really taking an interest and saying, how's this work? And why is that so important? And it's that taking an interest in it that it starts to come to life. Yes?
I want to ask if you can expand on what we open with. Meditation is not traditional for writing. Recently got that quote that someone wrote, and I don't know if it's exact or not, but the Dalai Lama said that every child learned to meditate within one generation audience will disappear. So if you can talk about how the interrelationship between devotional practice and meditation practice, how does it help one? How does one help? Is that part of the path?
Well, I think one of the things is just recognizing that the Buddha's path is an integrated path of sila, samadhi, panya, virtue, of meditation, of wisdom. But then that's like a template. And then, as one starts to investigate different aspects of how that path manifests, then it starts to include different areas of activities and parts of our life, so that and that's learning how to integrate those different aspects of our life, and then as one looks at, say, like a teaching that the Buddha gave on, say, the 5 spiritual faculties, faith or confidence, effort, energy, mindfulness, awareness, concentration or stability of mind, wisdom or discernment, that saddha, sila, sati, samadhi, panya. Start realizing that those are also, say, faculties of mind that you start mapping them on to different areas of one's life, and different areas of the Buddha, of the Eightfold Path, and sort of, because these are not the teachings aren't just isolated, and one of the things is, and that's what it's helpful to have a bit of knowledge of some of the fundamental teachings. So you start to realize, this comes up in this way. This manifests in that way. This is how that works. So it's because it's like a mosaic that so there's the different pieces, and then as you start to, they start finding their places, kind of a picture emerges of a life of Buddhist practice, and then, but it's an integrated whole. So that sometimes certainly our daily life is very much a part of that. How do we live in our day-to-day life, and how does that affect us, and how do we take an interest so that it has a beneficial effect? Aspects of say, devotional practice. I mean, one of the things that it does in terms of, say, like ceremony, ritual, one of the first things that happens is if you've got a ceremony with just one person, it's a pretty dull ceremony. But as you have a gathering, and a bunch of people come together in a wholesome way, it's contact with Kalyanamitta, and that's something that is having good spiritual friendships are such an important and foundational piece of our spiritual aspiration, or how to fulfill that. So that, of course, there's that famous discourse where Ananda's been meditating in the forest, and he has this insight, and he comes back and tells the Buddha, he's had this great insight that half of the holy life is having good spiritual friends, and the Buddha said, no, Ananda, it's not half the holy life, it's the whole of the holy life. And so that contact with good spiritual friends. So that's what having a spiritual community that one plugs into, having ceremony that happens from time to time, where you do things together. Like it's like for us living in a monastery, one of the great benefits of living in community is that, it's very rare that we're all completely lazy and listless all at the same time, or that we're all just sort of irritated and fed up with each other all at the same time, so that you've got, it isn't as if it doesn't happen, those things don't happen, but it's sort of, you've got people around you that you've got different signals coming that you can pick up on. You can recognize, wow, I'm just really getting into a rut. But then there's others around. You say, okay, that's a good example I can pick up on, or, in different aspects. So that's, the sense of community and having that fostering that it seems like a very, almost like, very small thing. But it's all these small things that come together that create this rich tapestry of a spiritual life.